welcome back to another episode of the South Star Classroom. That's Omar, that's David. I am Charles. Jube is not with us today, but she sends her love. But today is I'm really excited for this episode that David has produced and put together. So let me just throw it to the boss man in charge. You know what I mean, David? What are we doing today, brother? This is all you now.
All right, let's go. We are going to do a couple of things today. We're going to debrief what happened last Tuesday. We were here together on the show last Tuesday, and we talked a little bit about the election, but it was clearly before any of the results came in. So we are going to debrief, what's happened in this past week, and probably focus on national, but also dive into some local elections as well, and then. Given that we are an education podcast, we are going to, what would you say? We're going to go down one level and look at some of these promises or commitments that Trump has made to disband and kind of take apart the Federal Department of Education. So we'll talk about what it is, what it currently is, what it does. And then talk about what some of the potential impacts could be if that agency were to be removed. And so that's enough for an hour. We might not have enough time.
Make me promises.
But let's check in. How are we doing, Mr. Yanar? How are you doing? How are things in the Lone Star State?
Man, I mean, it's why I can never have a show and be like, yeah, things aren't crazy in Texas. I always have to give the disclaimer that El Paso, which is like the Republic of El Paso, Mexico light, is so far away from Texas. But I'll actually dip into El Paso because I think it's a fascinating look at this election through the lens of El Paso. But I mean, on a much more superficial level, it was like we're getting this massive cold front. I don't know if you remember the last cold front that Texas got where Ted Cruz decided to bounce to Cancun and deal with freezing crisis from a tropical paradise. Yeah, the people of Texas have overwhelmingly elected Ted Cruz back to the Senate. This is a very, very red state. And we're under another freeze. What that meant for El Paso was that it got colder than 50 degrees. And that means everybody in the town panics and goes nuts. And they're dressed up in 85 sweaters. It looks like the Christmas Story where the kid is all in the 75 layers and his arms are all stretched out because there's so many layers going on. And it decided to warm back up. So as we warm back up, the political climate gets a little bit frosty. So I've got lots to say about that coming up. Doc, what's the word, man? How you been?
I'm good, man. I'm fine. Just busy with different projects and work, and just kind of, the day kind of blurs together. Started at 6, still working. We'll be working directly after this. But it's a blessing. But and I think with the stuff for this election, I think it's been very interesting, especially me being a Democrat and me having friends that were very, very, disappointed in how the election played out, and just also, just me having to be the friend that's probably not as liked as somebody who voted for her, gave money to her, but I'm warning my friends, it would be foolish of us to just dismiss this as just sexist or just racist and not have any self-reflection as a party when you get mollywopped and lose every single battleground state. And I want to deal in facts. I want to deal in facts, because if we would have went the other way in the same way, we would have came on here and said Trump got mollywopped. So, you lose by 50, you lose by 50, man. Whether it's your team or the opposite team, right? We got spanked, and we can be petulant about it, but everybody was talking about preserving democracy a week ago. So this is a part of democracy, and sometimes you lose. I've lost people that I love have lost before. And you gotta go and rejigger and come back tougher. So, it might be a tough love episode for me.
Tough love, Dave. How you been, brother?
I have been good, staying busy, and obviously, yeah, just kind of like taking in all the news as it is coming through, all the different like layers of reporting and election data that's been coming in, and this group, that group. I do think it's interesting that with this presidential election, which Trump clearly won. I don't know what was the word you used?
Mollywopping.
Mollywopped. Dog walked, mollywopped. There's a lot of
Dog
ways to talk
walk,
about getting your ass
mollywop.
beat.
Okay. Definitely an ass kicking, but I would say, I mean, when you look back at the overall numbers.
Oh, David, he's behind you with the perfect posture right now. I'm sorry. Omar, David's dog every episode does he's moving now, but he does this thing where he just sits there in perfect posture and just looks out. I was trying to have David catch it, but sorry, David.
You know why? Because
my dog, I got excited. My bad.
My wife just left, and so the dog comes out to say goodbye to her, and to be close to the window when she comes home. But I think
does the dog do that for you, David?
No, not at all. In terms of raw numbers, I think fewer people turned out this election cycle, and so I think even Trump got fewer votes, and obviously Kamala got much fewer. But I don't know if you could say it was a dog walking. I think clearly won
every battleground state politically.
Yes, but the margins in some of them were like by like 100,000 votes.
But it doesn't matter, right? It's like if you lose it's like if the Lakers and the Celtics are in the finals, and every game the Celtics win by 1 point, but it's 4-0, you still got swept historically. You get what
I
I'm
understand
saying?
that. I understand that. Yeah, but I think looking underneath the hood at some of the numbers, it's not quite how it's being presented. But yes, I agree with you. A loss is an L is an L.
I mean, I feel you. I just know if it was the other way around, we would have no problem saying Trump got demolished.
Mm-hmm.
Every pundit would have said he got demolished if he lost every single battleground state.
No, man.
So yeah, let's transition into our first topic. I'll hand it over to Omar,
Mr. Yanar.
And let's
can't roll my tongue, Omar. I'm sorry. Couldn't get the full effect, brother.
Man. So we are now in the wrap up of the 2024 election, and for our listeners, for this country, I think I've got several statements to say, but for the most part, there's probably at first a question of what happened. I think it was surprising to many. I think many were shocked that Trump hit the numbers that he did. I don't think it was surprising to Dr. Cole, David, and I that this performance happened. But I think there's a lot of folks out there that are wondering what exactly happened. In that dissection of what happened, what I'm really disappointed about, and I have a whole rant about the media that I want to share with everybody that I'll get to, is, well, women come out and vote enough. It's women's fault. It's the Black vote didn't come out enough. The Latino vote didn't come out enough. What happened to white women in the suburbs? And statistically speaking, y'all fucked up, Democrats, because on all of those statistics, every single one of them, Trump had major gains amongst Black men, major gains in the working class sector of all races, gains amongst suburban women, which was, interestingly enough, where Kamala and thank you, Toya, the only demographic that it was not surprising that stood up for democracy.
I think he grew there too, though. I think he did grow there. It might have been like a point or two, but I think he grew there as well. He had more.
Yeah, they were the most consistent voting bloc were Black women. But what I'm saying is
90% Black women and 80% Black men. I mean, you're not getting numbers like that
Yeah, man. And the Latinos didn't come the way that everyone predicted. Women didn't, white women didn't. And I think that there was this idea that after Roe v. Wade and after the major gains in the midterm elections in 2022, that Roe v. Wade was going to be, and abortion was going to be the pinnacle issue. Women were going to come out in droves and vote. And in fact, there were like a series of commercials, like a really funny commercial. I don't know if you all saw it, where it was kind of like a secret. Like what happens in the ballot box stays in the ballot box. And it was women conspiring with one another that despite their husband voting for Trump, they knew who they should be voting for. And I got to tell you, like, no one voted the way anyone thought. And the first thing everyone does is start issuing blame. And that is such a dumb misnomer, because what it does is, instead of looking and saying, what did we do as a Democratic Party, if there is a we within that group, to completely screw this one up? So much easier to be like, well, if they did this and they did that. And then I hear in the media, like, the Democratic Party needs to look in the mirror. There needs to be a lot of mirror looking. I'm like, media, shut the fuck up. You need to do a shitload of
I think
looking
we
in the
do though.
mirror,
As
because
a
they
dim, I
are
think we
so
do. But
full
continue.
of shit. And I will get into that media, but my first expanse, and then I want to share, like, pitch it to you guys, is none of the groups performed the way anyone thought. The pundits and the pollsters, of course, as always, since 2016, have been dead wrong, particularly about Trump. So, in my respect, this is an election that the Democratic Party misunderstood, politicians misunderstood, the media misunderstood, pollsters misunderstood, which just goes to show you the only people who really understood what was going on here were the Republicans. And they had their finger on the pulse. They knew what they were doing. They kicked the shit out of Kamala and the Democratic Party. There was not one swing state that went towards Kamala. Not one. Fucking Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia, all of it. So, gentlemen, in your opinion, what were your takeaways?
I have a lot of different ones. I disagree with some of that, man. I think I've caught heat throughout this year over and over by warning my party that we were moving very, very far left, that people were tired of being over, like having fingers wagged at them, that we were kind of disenfranchising the black men that were in the party that identified as straight or masculine or whatever the case was. And that some of these things went a little too far, like that there were certain policies, or we're arguing about things that feel very coastal elitish, very New York, California problems, as opposed to I've been on the road all year. I've been in middle America all year. I'm near Chicago, but I'm like in the south suburb that's not far from Indiana. And there are black people and brown people here that have been, I've been on this show talking about how this migrant situation, like I said, hey man, I've never seen us talk about this way. I've never seen that happen. I've never seen this vitriol. Like,
I'm gonna bring that shit up.
And I said that over and over again. And some of that stuff came to pass. And some of those things, right? And it wasn't that a lot of these people got flipped and went Republican. It was what we said. And you and I had a political show when it was just you and I, Omar. And I said, a lot of people are going to stay home. They're not motivated a second time around by you telling me it's easier to first go to get people to vote against Trump and to vote against the fear of Trump. But a lot of people are now saying, well, we went through him one time, like, and the world is still here. Like, and again, I do not want Trump president. I did not want him to win. I actually paid and gave money to Democrats. Please stop sending me text messages, by the way. I'm not donating no more money to put this over. You know what I'm saying? But like, I think, and I think that while racism, sexism, misogyny, all that exists, and it exists everywhere, it's not going away. It's baked into the cake. We would be foolish as a party to not evaluate or look in the mirror with where we are, that we are now being called the party of elites. We are now being called the party that has moved way too far. And we had a lot of criticism for the right moving too far to the right. And I think people were also telling us that, hey, things are moving a little bit too far to the left. I think this party was built on wanting to be equal and building equality and equity. And I think that there were some folks in our party that didn't want to just be equal. They wanted to now be the power structure, and it played out in a few different ways, and it didn't jive. So if we're going to call everybody racist or misogynistic or homophobic that chose that other side, then we're gonna keep missing the plot. Because we didn't do that when those people, some of those same people voted for Obama. And again, that not that means anything per se, but it shows that there was a stomach for X, Y, and Z. In more than one way. And again, people are gonna get mad at me for saying that, but it's too many Democrats are coming out and blaming everybody else and what everybody else did, and not looking at what we had. We had Latino folks. We keep talking of, like, and y'all, we got two of y'all here, but it's like, yo, man, like, stop expecting these people to vote as a block. They've told you over and over, like, we are not the same. And like, we as liberals think that we're honoring people by using terms like Latinx, and Latino people will tell you that shit don't have no meaning in my house. Like, why are you doing that? Me and David works on reports where people are like, yeah, bro, we don't use that. You know what I'm saying? And these are people that are left-leaning people. So I'll stop there. But the hubris of us to think that white women were going to secretly vote against their husbands' wishes and give each other a nod and a wink in the booth and go and save democracy. You put your money on suburban white women while having a whole bunch of shit to talk about black men, where Obama came out and wagged his finger at us, and has no smoke for Latinos or white people. I'm not listening to this shit no more, you know? So I was supposed to be landing my plane. Sorry, let me land it there.
I think it's incredibly complex, but based on like the last week of looking at things, I think the economy was like the number one thing that pushed people over the edge. I was looking at some historical data around like inflation rates. Like if our economy is struggling with higher than average inflation during a presidential election, like the incumbents typically historically are just they're not reelected, right? It's pretty clear. And so that's clearly the case in 2014, where everything costs more, right? For whatever reason, it's inflation. We're still coming out of the global supply chain stuff from the pandemic. It's very complicated, but at the end of the day, if you want to put gas in your car, if you want to feed your family, you're going to be paying more. And the Republicans understood that, and they used that as a very powerful messaging platform, right? And so I think, there was the whole thing about do you want 4 more years of this economy? Well, I don't. I definitely don't. I don't think any of us do, right? But like, could you put it all on the shoulders of Biden and Harris? Same answer. I don't think you can. But it doesn't matter. At that point, you're talking about like an emotional, a very pragmatic argument that people are trying to grapple with. Something has to change, right? So people voted for change. And then the other piece was, I think, just all of the cultural issues. The economy comes along with, and now we can like move in this. And I agree. I think the immigration situation is out of control. It seems like there are no like safeguards, and it's impacting cities across. I'm not going to go as far as to say like, the Venezuelan gangs are doing all the stuff that they say they're doing, but it is causing tension in particular communities across this country. Like, we're not set up for it, right? And it's impacting people's lives and their safety in different ways. So, including immigrants that come here and like don't have a good landing spot. They're just like dumped off in some downtown somewhere, and don't have access to housing or food or whatever. So I think the anti-immigrant stuff is obviously very real. They pushed on that very hard, and even for Mexican Americans or like people from Central America that maybe were born here, it's people are very quick to turn around even after one generation and become anti-immigrant against their own people, right? It's a kind of a common theme that we do here in the U.S. I think the other thing that I saw was, I talk about this kind of as a fringe issue, but I want to bring some more information back. We saw an incredible amount of anti-transgender messaging, right? Even though, like, I don't think Kamala Harris is super pro-trans, right? But the kind of cultural messaging that was sent out around the anti-trans kind of platform, somewhere in the area, I think of, and I saw this and I just looked it up again, over $200 million were spent on network TV ads targeting transgender rights throughout this election cycle, right? And so at the end of the day, like, what's really going to change there? So I think the trans thing is definitely real. And then one more thing I'll say, and then I'll pass it on, is you know, I was definitely going back years, part of a movement that criticized at the time the Trump administration for the school shutdowns. Remember, when our schools shut down, Trump was president, not Biden. And then, you know, we pushed to get the schools reopened.
We watched shenanigans from our side.
People were saying that we were racist and this and that. That movement of the school reopeners activated a whole class of people to become politicized, and they are still politicized today, mainly white women, right? That will never forget that the schools that their children attended were closed, mainly during a Democratic administration, and that has turned into all kinds of like energy on the Republican side. I think that's very interesting. I see a lot of that. So I think
I was gonna say I'll respond after you go, Omar.
Okay.
And I know at 25, 26, we got to transition, but go ahead.
Okay, man.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
I'll be, I won't be quick. I'll try. Let me do a quick breakdown. How did this translate? So I'll look at Latino votes just as a way of kind of using this as a macrocosm to be like, what the hell happened, right? So Latinos overwhelmingly voted for Biden, overwhelmingly voted for Obama. I want you to think about the fact that 55% of Latinos in the state of Texas, that's the majority of Latinos in the state of Texas, voted for Trump. Trump won a majority of the Latino vote. And David astutely said a lot of this had to do with immigration. Let me break that down for a second. 14 out of the 18 border counties in the state of Texas voted for Trump.
Yeah.
So while like we as the Democrats fixated on and allowed the talking points of this party, the party of FDR, the party of the people, the party that has brought government in as a way of helping to resolve economic issues, of solving things, what in the world were we doing allowing our message to get hijacked by not just the Republican Party, but ourselves? That is why you lost 14 out of 18 counties in Texas. By the way, that's double what Trump got in 2020. He doubled his wins in those counties from 4 years ago. Much because this whole immigration thing was
Pennsylvania,
ignored.
Michigan, like, I mean,
all
Arizona, right. Nevada, like, I mean, he took the blue wall and he jump roped with it. Like, again, like,
hell yeah.
Politically speaking, as a poli-sci nerd, like, that is called wiping the board. Like, it is the closest since Reagan, man, when Reagan had 49 out of the 50 spots. Like, again, he has a mandate from his people. Like, with that type of win, he has a mandate. And I would just say this, and I want to, and I say this with love. I love Michelle. I love our people. But I think this is somewhat of a problem. I think that it's like, again, if everything is just talking about, we call people in our party stupid, we calling people dumb that didn't vote for X, Y, and Z. We're saying Latinos don't love themselves or whatever the case is. Like, we're not listening to the issues that these people are given. And as somebody, I've spent time in Illinois, Cleveland, Memphis, like these kind of middle areas, man. There are issues that we have in California and New York and like these kind of city even in like the heart of Chicago, that the rest of the country is like, we don't care about that shit. That's not what we're focused on. We're telling you this is how much bacon is costing and I don't like it. And instead of being like, well, what we said to them was like, no, the economy is good. We okay. And these people was like, what? Like, no. Like, and we kept talking about uninformed voters. How many times you got to hear that you're an uninformed voter, that you're an uneducated voter? How many, like, these people voted for their self-interest. And I think that I care about race a lot and I study it and I got all these degrees and we talk about it. We're a very conscious group of people. I don't know if just everybody is thinking about it. I'll just say this. I'm just saying, I think there's big R racism and little R racism. Yeah. And what I mean by that is I've been fighting this fight for a long time. I know people in my family is tired of hearing about this shit at certain dinners though, right? They're like, look, I just want to go to work, man. I don't have time to think about that. If their big R racism is where we should be focused on, like these policies, these things that's like, yo, this is very glaring. There are other things though that if our ancestors dealt with and we told them that this is what we was dealing with, they'd be like, that's it. That's what somebody said something to you online. Somebody did this. Wait, but you can eat at the counter. You can do this or you can do that. Like, I just think that we can't treat every issue as a level 10. We have to be able to discern between what we have to choose our battles better. I don't know if I'm saying it well, but I think we picked some of the wrong battles this go round. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. You can't necessarily go after to trying to change people's hearts and minds in an election cycle, but you can be focused on like particular policy issues. I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah, I think we shame people a lot.
And I'll say it too. I agree with you. I mean, I think every voter that goes in to vote is informed. But I will also say, I think they all have varying levels of information, right?
I was about to say, like, you and Bill and Doc are hitting on some very, very like extraordinarily tangible points, which is what I saw in this election was a crisis of twofold, a crisis of information. And I'll get into that in a second, because where people are getting information and what that information is, I have a huge bone to pick about that on both sides. But this is also a problem of elitism. And Bill keeps talking about this. And it's like, how did the Democratic Party, the party of like the working people, of the people, become the party of like snobby, shaming, like unadulterated bigots? Bigots, bro. Like, there's no better way of putting this than just bigotry. It's the people that don't have college educations. They ruined everything. Oh, it's these dumb people who are voting against their own self-interest, Latinos like me. Like, it's what Doc was saying, but I want to quickly stretch this and then I'll discuss this in my final moment. I want us to think about where this elitism is going, because I blame both sides for this elitism. Something Doc and I were talking about on a call. If the Democrats have gotten to the point of strict elitism, well, people are uninformed. People are dumb. If they only got a college education, if they read the New York Times, if these Latinos just stopped voting against their own self-interest, like, why have you decided to clump yourself in a party of elitism in your own sounding board instead of actually understanding how to help the people? But I don't in any way, shape, or form leave Republicans out of this. For all those like Hearthwart wearing, I believe in Jesus's word and no other word other than Jesus, so screw the Jews and screw anybody else, and we're in our clumps and we know better and we need to stick around with our own people. That's elitism too. Your ability to separate and not have a conversation with the people on the left, and the left thinking that they can have a good conversation with those on the right. That is the huge problem here, because as everyone says, look in the mirror, I would say, look at each other. You both refuse to have a conversation with one another because you have this insane ability these days to pocket yourselves in communities where you don't have to get along with one another. So for those of you in Seattle, I live in a progressive community. We know better. We don't have to deal with these Republicans. I'm like, drive out of Seattle and see what is on everyone's lawn out there. It's a big ass Trump flag.
I'm telling
And for
you.
those of you outside of Seattle and everywhere else in part of the country, outside of urban areas, who are like, these liberal Dems don't know shit and they're ruining this country. I'm like, bro, you're just as bad. You're segregating yourself in just the same stupidity and denial that the liberals are. And if you keep separating yourselves, what is that going to cause but ludicrous tumult and hatred? And I'm like, it's both y'all's fault. And I will say in my closing comments that I blame the media like no other, but I'm going to save that for the ending because, man, I got a huge ass bone to pick with them and the information that they're sharing. But we got a show to talk about the Department of Education.
I know, man. It's just go ahead, David. I mean, you done started a great conversation. It's like make it a two-part.
California took a turn to the right as well as a state. Like we historically had patches of blue in the interior, but now pretty much.
I'll pull it up.
If you can pull it up, it's gone. It's definitely made a big shift, and a couple of things happened in California too, outside of the presidential election. Local elections, we had a mayor of San Francisco. Was voted out of office. A mayor of Oakland was recalled, and an Alameda County, which is a huge East Bay County district attorney, kind of considered soft on crime, was also recalled. So and California voters overwhelmingly approved Proposition 36, which I think is kind of a return to kind of a 3 strikes model in the state.
Wow.
Changing particular laws. Yeah. So look at that. That's California right there.
Exactly. This is, and don't that looks? It's just a few counties underneath Reagan,
I'll show
right?
you Texas, man, which is goddamn.
I mean, but that's the thing.
Isn't that crazy?
But and I know we got to get to that part, but there was something that Omar said, and I want to just point out. He said how he blames both. And again, I agree. But we lost. Losers got to go in and reflect. Winners don't have to reflect. They should. It would be wise. But losers have to go and reflect. We got swept in the finals. We got to. You can bring the same team. You can bring the same talking points. You can do the same finger wagging. You can do the same thing where you talk down to your men, but you talk up every other group, or you trying to partner with suburban white women, or whatever the case is. You can do that again, but you have gotten a resounding response to where people are. And I'm telling you, I'm in Chicago, dog. When people are saying we've been asking for help for decades, we needed all this help, and then they see somebody come in and they got a brown neighbor that's also saying the same thing, and now you have food cards for people, you have money and apartments, and you're kids out of there where they play football to house migrants, or you're explaining to them why Zelensky's getting all this money. I'm telling you, man, I watched it in real time. People get disenchanted. I watched it, so.
And here's what the change looked like in Texas along the border, right? This is from El Paso all the way down to the valley over time. Look how red and that's on the border.
Yeah, man. Right? Check out like 1996, which is like your Clinton years, all the way down to 2024, and the startling change that was, man. Look at 2008 with Obama. Holy smokes. I mean, I don't even know if you guys want to see Texas in 2024 as a whole. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Interesting. The whole state's red.
Yeah.
The county one is absolutely fascinating. I'll share with you the Texas
one. All right.
There.
Okay.
I gotta get the number right. I have the wrong episode listed, but I'm gonna fix that. Thank you for having the right one, David. I know we've gone.
Wait, did I have the wrong one?
No, I think you got the right one. You got the right one. But
okay, no problem. All right. Well, let's transition here. We've got about another 30 minutes or so. So now we're going to kind of microscope down and talk about a particular policy issue that that Trump has been talking about for a while. This is not new, and you hear a lot of people talking about this from the conservative, Republican, right-wing kind of scorched earth school choice people is, it starts with the premise of like small government, right? Let's put government back in the hands of the people, back in the hands of the states and localities. Okay, what does that look like? Obviously, abortion is one of those issues, right? Let the states decide. Let the states decide. We're going to talk about education and the rhetoric around Trump's desire to disband the Federal Department of Education. Let's talk about what it is first. It is part of the federal government, and they do a number of things. We'll put some numbers behind this just to help out our viewers. So the federal government, the Federal Department of Education provides, administrates a program known as Title I, right? And Title I provides grants to LEAs, local education agencies or school districts that are serving high percentage of students that are designated as low income, right? Rural, urban, suburban, whatever you have. A $20 billion annual program to kind of help school districts that are serving high needs populations. That's number one. Number two, special education. There's a federal act known as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, IDEA. And so that's about a $15 billion program annually designed for supporting students with special needs, special education students. There's a higher education aspect to this as well. Pell Grants, right? These are grants to low-income students that are pursuing higher education. That's about a $23 billion a year budget. There's a charter schools program, which I'm sure Omar is familiar with. I'm familiar with it. It's a federal charter schools startup grant program. Provides startup funding to provide funding in that gap time. If you want to start a charter school and you're not going to draw your state funding for a year or so, the federal program steps in to help you get up and off the ground.
It is absolutely mandatory.
Yeah, $440 million annually, right? And then
which, by the way,
programs,
just quickly, like that's a drop in the bucket. Like with the amount of charter schools across the state of Texas, across the country, you're very lucky to get that funding, and it's super like a necessity. But when you're talking about 440 million, when the Department of Defense is how much?
Oh God, I don't even know. It's huge.
Like almost a trillion.
And then there are also programs designed for to support schools that are serving high numbers of students that are learning English language acquisition programs, about 800 million a year. Still not huge. 800 million is a lot of money, but spread out across the country, it gets watered down. But you can see we're talking about billions and billions of dollars, probably upwards of like 60 or 70 billion that I just highlighted. That comes through the Federal Department of Education, right? So what does disbanding it, what would that even look like? So I'm gonna stop there and present the question to you both. Where are my notes? Let's go to my notes because we have notes for today.
I got some notes down there too.
So we know what the Federal Department of Education does. That's what it does, right? Why do you think they want to close the Federal Department of Education? What's the goal there?
Well, I think part of the reason, if you just understand Republicans and what their ideology is, government's too big. So they want to like shrink government, right? They want to end redundancy. So there are tasks and tools that currently live in the Department of Education. Those would be distributed both to the state and local level, but also to other things that have to remain federal. It would go to other departments. So something might go to the Department of Treasury around, fund dispersion. Maybe I'm just giving an example because I don't know. They haven't said it yet, but maybe they're still going to be supporting charter. So maybe that charter money is coming out of the Department of Treasury or something like that. And just, kind of splitting that up and breaking that down. And it's a way for them to try to find X amount of $1 billion today, what, 20 billion to 60 billion dollars today, even though it's going to have a lumped up cost and fee to get rid of it and then disperse it. But they're thinking that it would, balance out later on down the line. And honestly, and a lot of the Republicans just have not liked the direction that education is going in. And they felt like it should be Republicans believe in states' rights over national rights. So that was the whole thing with Roe v. Wade. That was the thing with this. It's like, we're going to put that to a lower court. We're going to mind our business in DC. So good luck if you live in Texas versus New York or California or Oklahoma. That's kind of what that is.
Okay. I mean, bro, I'm first just going to be uncensored because I think Doc was super, man, that was eloquent and that was so well stated. I think I'm just going to sound batshit crazy now. But I'm with
it. It felt safe. His response was safe.
I'm just saying what it's supposed to be.
Dangerous.
A factual answer based off ideology.
I'm talking real dangerous, man. And I think Bill would agree with me on this one. 3 things: privatization, indoctrination, subjugation. Straight up. So what do I mean by that? Simple, man. Privatization. Let's get rid of public schools. Let's get rid of standards. Let's get private schools going. Because then, as Bill quite eloquently said himself, bro, there are no standards anymore. So those kids who can't read, who are going to be illiterate, they're toast. Because schools will just do whatever the fuck they want to do and not care about literacy scores or anything else. Now, that's not to say that us as educators won't care and won't do the right thing, but there's no impetus across this time and space in the United States for people who are not doing well to do well. They're just like, whatever. Some kids are going to win, some kids are not. Who does that help? Upper middle class, and rich kids. They're always going to do better because, as every statistic on the planet has pointed to, if you've got parents who are educated, the likelihood of your success is extreme. If your parents, sadly, like most of my parents who graduated with a 6th grade reading level, they are doomed to poverty. And I got to tell you, that lies into the subjugation component. As Caddyshack so eloquently said, the world needs ditch diggers too. Guess who's going to be the ditch diggers, man? Like, it's straight up going to be low income, Black and brown people, where the majority of the low income folks, there's a shitload of low income white people, but someone's got to do those jobs. That is the part of subjugation. Indoctrination, that should be simple. If you have a private school, there's no separation of church and state. You can create the textbooks that say what you want to say. You can create the ideologies that you want to say. You can
Which
do
many
all
would argue, Omar, that that's happening already. That's already happening.
Straight up, man. Straight up, it's happening already. So the dismantling of these things, to me, is simple. Privatization, indoctrination, subjugation. And you got, I'm sorry, man, you got to be out to lunch. Not this crowd, not our audience, but this country's got to be out to lunch if they think that that's not what the Republican Party's going for here. Study our history. Study our history.
Yeah.
I dare you. I challenge you.
I feel you.
I saw a comment up here. I think it was Michelle. So, I mean, what I see is, and this is very interesting. I understand the concept of states' rights on particular issues. I definitely see a role, at the federal level, like if we are to be considered like a country, right? Some kind of national education standards, some kind of a national accountability framework around core basics in education. If you push all of that to the states, you're going to get some pretty wildly varying results of what education looks like in Florida versus what it looks like in Idaho versus what it looks like in California or Texas or Alaska. And I don't think that's good for a country that is still, in its infancy, working to develop a sense of self. I think it actually pushes against that. It's a great talking point. I also wonder, and there was a clip I was going to play, but 2 more things. There's this whole idea of dismantling the Department of Education coming at the same time that, in your state, Omar, is about to pass or maybe has passed a school choice bill. School choice under Trump is going to run crazy,
It's
right?
about to explode.
We're going to, it's going to explode.
Straight up.
And at the same time, what you're going to see with a decentralized federal Department of Education is, many more paths forward to take public money, to put it directly into the hands of families to use in an unregulated private school market.
Absolutely.
Right. And I get it. We get, most of us work. Some people get disabilities. Some people get government benefits. When the government gives you money, they don't necessarily tell you where to shop, unless it's like EBT. You can only shop in certain places. If you have government mandated healthcare, a government plan, your choices are limited. I get that. But when we're talking about a public good like education, right, and giving taxpayer money to families, in some cases, clearly where public education has failed, including charter schools, because charter schools are public schools, that's a wild concept to me, because now what you're doing is you're allowed, especially like if we're going to say non-denominational, okay, well, maybe that's different, right? But we're talking about people that are, going, and I'm not against any kind of like organized religion. People want to study in their particular communities around religion based on where they're from. That's all fine. But using government money to subsidize that type of education, especially when there's zero accountability around any kind of outcomes, any kind of like credentialing of teachers, of administrators, of what happens in those buildings, is crazy to me. And it tells me that they want to push this money into, essentially like religious Christian schools. That's really what the end goal is here. And that's that's real. We've seen that. The other thing is, we didn't talk about the higher ed piece. I don't know if you caught Trump's little speech. I was going to play it, but I don't want to hear it. He's talking about pulling Pell Grants from universities that continue to do DEI work, right? Just like zeroing them out, even suing some of them, lawsuits that would equal the amount of their endowments, right? So that's actually like.
You mean like the road that a Department of Education normally can do? Is that what you mean? Like that's what fans do. They set a mandate, and you don't have to follow it, but if you don't, you lose that money that you were getting.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Well, I know y'all know. I'm just saying for people.
Correct. Yeah.
That's how the fans.
So I think we're in some cases we're going to see, maybe a watering down. I don't even know if logistically he can disband the Department of Education. Like, I don't know how you can do that in 4 years. We'll see. I think it was a good talking point, but if he didn't do it 4 years ago, he obviously has, more people working for him. They've had more time to plan. And so I think it's something that we're going to have to watch. And so, yeah.
Yeah, man.
I mean, shit, dude. I'll say a couple things. One, just to Toya, who started public education, we could do a whole show on the advent of public education and Horace Mann and why it was created, and ultimately, like the secret behind public education, which is let's get everybody a 6th grade education so that they can work in the factories and be manufacturers. And if you happen to graduate from high school, shit, that's a gauntlet that you just passed. That's some management.
Well, she's referencing the learners in this book. She's referencing what we learned in this book, the education of blacks in the South. Basically, the role that freed slaves in the South played in the establishment of public education.
Even better.
Yeah, like so it was in the South, black folks was doing that, and it caught. But
do we want to go back to like this like insane, like we have to fucking fend for ourselves shit? That sounds nuts, and I'm with David on that. And real quick take on the private school education, just so people understand, like anyone who thinks that Adam Smith's ideology of economics is going to work here, like, dude, shut the fuck up. And go back to your Ayn Rand shit.
They're not nerds like us.
I know. I was going to explain it. So Adam Smith was an economist, I think actually from Scotland. And his idea was that, like, hey, man, if you just leave the market by itself, no regulation, no government intervention.
The invisible hand of the market will guide you.
Yeah, you just let the market figure itself out. All things will work out great. Well, let me tell you what the market's going to do here. So for a kid like my niece Alea, who goes to a private school, what's going to happen is that her parents, right, they have the money to send her to that private school. Let's just say it's $10,000 a year.
I was going to use 10,000 in my example. Continue.
There you go. Perfect.
Go ahead. We'll
Then
keep it the same.
Trump and the government says, here's 10,000, Sarai Yanar and Eric Honshu, to get your kid into whatever school of choice that you want. Well, what do you think the very first thing Alea's private school is going to do?
Well, now it's
They're
20,000.
not- Bingo. Because we could get the 10 from the parent and we could get the 10 from the government, which means that all those kids who are getting $10,000 who wanted to go to that school, they ain't going to that school. All those private schools that are getting money from parents are going to up the tuition to ensure those kids don't go and they get more money. So how's the free market for you now? It ain't going to work. And David brought up a really good point. If you live in New Mexico, Mississippi, Montana, Wyoming, all these states that don't have a lot of money and don't have the money themselves within their own tax base to help kids, they're fucked. Like, just straight up screwed because they rely so much on federal money to get things by. They don't have enough taxpayer money on their own. California will be fine. Texas will be fine. Florida will be fine. These states have a lot of money. But if you live in Alabama, North Carolina, New Mexico, even Arizona, like, good luck, man, because that ain't gonna work. And I know we'll talk about, we don't know how much time later because I'll put a monkey wrench. Everyone's like, oh my God, what the hell is gonna happen? This is gonna take a lot of work on Congress's behalf to actually shift this. Trump can't do this shit on his own. There's something called the Appropriations Committee. The Appropriations Committee are basically the money people. They handle all the money. They decide where money goes. They decide if the federal government it's going to get what money. They actually decide the Department of Defense gets $890 billion. The Department of Ed gets $3. The Department of Health and Human Services get, 42 cents. They decide. So it will take a congressional act to get rid of the Department of Ed. But yeah, man, like I think I just saw them election results. Who won the Senate and who won the House this time?
Right. I mean, and they're going to have it. And I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, so again, I didn't want this side to win. I don't want this side to win, but I want, when you don't know and you're afraid, lean on facts. So these are facts that we're giving you. And like, I am in alignment with Omar's like prevalent theory. I think that there will be a vacuum if that is the case. And then what it allows is for, there will be a lot of junk schools that are created to take that government money. It's almost, think of if there was a public housing, but for schools, but for like private schools. It's kind of what people are like afraid of. I think here's what I would say though, because the other thing, and I got to be fair in this as well, people said accountability goes out the door. There's no accountability now though, right? I'm just giving you the other sides of these arguments, right? The system hasn't been working for people already. Alabama and Mississippi, they're struggling now with all these things. Prices keep going up, wages keep going up, but how we actually measure how well schools are doing is not going well. And actually, it comes from liberals. Liberals have been the people that wanted to get rid of standardized testing. They did not believe in testing. Ask me how I know, because every time David and Charles used to put it up, our progressive friends would say, we don't, those numbers are biased, this, that, and the third, right? Like, so again, these counter arguments, listen, man, to my Democratic people, and I am still a Democrat for the time being, I might go independent because I'm sick of our team. I really am. And I'm sick of how we dealt with this. But listen, man, when you punch somebody, stop being surprised when they punch back. This is a fight. Understand that fights go two ways. So now you got dealt a blow and we lost, and you lost the House and we lost the Senate and we lost the executive branch. All right. So now what are we going to do? Are our Democrats going to be smarter and say, look, Sonia, if you're thinking about leaving anytime soon, we need you to do it right now so I can put in somebody. Like, I don't think it's a good idea to stack the courts. I think that is a terrible idea, because what's good for the goose has to be good for the gander. What does that mean? That means if you do it on the Democratic side, that means now you got the Republicans with the House, the Senate. They have everything. What's to stop them from just adding more seats? And now we look like Parliament. All I'm saying is this, man. lean into facts, lean into the things that we want, and like make cogent, logical arguments. Don't expect everybody to be on the same wavelength that you're on. We're not going to get voters back by wagging fingers at them, by shaming them, by telling them they don't love themselves, by acting like we know what's going to happen in Latino homes, by acting like we know what's going to happen in suburban white homes, for yelling at every black person, black man or black woman that had asked a question during these times. People are prideful. And you get more people with honey than you do with vinegar. And I think we have been a very vinegarized group for the last few years. And we have to kind of eat that. And that's, if we talked about loving and protecting democracy 2 weeks ago, then all that shit has to be the same now. A democratic process played out and we lost convincingly, popular and that other vote. So now organize. What does that organizing look like? So my hardcore things, and we didn't really get to it. Listen, we talk about self-reliance and community dependence. Like, this is the time. Where is a local repository of Black history, brown history of your place? Like, you don't need schools to do that. We can do that on our own. Homeschooling as a resiliency strategy. I think material should be easier to get access to. Not that you're going to pull your kids out of that, but you need a repository of things that might be missing in that school setting that you can do at your house, in your community. Yep. You need, like, advocacy across all levels. That means you need to know who your school board is. That means you need to know who your principal and the state. You really need to know what's happening at the state, because the state's just got a lot more powerful. And that state superintendent matters a lot more today than he did yesterday, or she. And I think you have to continue to foster awareness. Like, don't just be led by your emotions. What are the facts? What is the recourse you have? What is the legal precedent? What can you actually do? And again, I come from a people that built education and then thrived directly out of the throes of slavery. You can't tell me that we're not built to handle this moment. I refuse to believe it. I have more faith in us and our brothers and our sisters. And I'm not going to sit up here and pity myself. We fucking lost. Now we have to recover and do what's necessary.
Yeah, there you go. Are you running for office in 2028, Charles?
I'm never running for office. I enjoy my personal life way too much.
I've been enjoying Charles as a independent party, because this two-party system sucks, and both sides.
I've decided,
like, eat a fat one, man. I'm sick and tired of both of them.
During this podcast, I was inspired to write a mission statement for a new private school network that I want to launch here in the American Southwest.
I would love that.
Get some of the school choice money, right? Let's see if they let us open this up. This is the mission statement for the Flores Magón Liberation Schools. The Flores Magón Liberation Schools are a radical network of institutions dedicated to empowering Chicano youth to reclaim and recolonize Aztlán. Inspired by the revolutionary spirit of Ricardo Flores Magón, we provide an education rooted in resistance, cultural pride, collective liberation. Our mission is to dismantle colonial systems, rebuild the Southwest as a homeland of our people, and forge a new generation of leaders committed to the liberation and restoration of Aztlán. That's what's up.
I mean, that's kind of the underlying mission statement.
Show me the money. Show me the money. Show me the money.
But, like, I'm with you, brother. And to answer my boy Julio's comment of, like, do you think a bunch of charters will try to convert into private schools? Like, hell yeah, of course. We have the highest level of accountability and scrutiny in the country. It is insane to run a public charter school. They're trying to shut us down at all moments. If there's an ability to turn that into a private, you're going to see a shitload of charters go private with this choice movement. And you know what? Like, everyone should look at this scenario and say, like, how did we wind up here? And I got to tell you, man, you only got yourselves to blame on this one. But I have a closing statement on that one. Are we in closings right now? Yeah, we are.
That was my.
And we have 80 people live with us right now, fellas. Just FYI.
Yeah.
So
that's incredible, man. You want me to go, Dave? You want to go?
Absolutely, brother.
Yeah, no, that was my closing statement's done. I read out my mission statement for my new organization. Yeah.
Well, I will do whatever you need us to do, David. To help.
Man. I want to close on a note that Doc constantly tells us, which is, like, we're out here on our own. And that really rings true for me in a lot of ways. Jon Stewart recently came out and I love Jon Stewart. I'm unabashed fan of his like extreme clarity on these issues. And he said, listen, like, we got to stop listening to all these pundits. They are just constantly wrong. All the shit that they're saying about the polls and this is going to happen and we're going to have these wins and Kamala's going to take this shit. They were all fucking wrong. And I wanted to actually dive a bit deeper into what he was saying, because on one end, let's just take that as a strand and just say, okay, the pundits are wrong, which clearly they have been. I want to go into a different strand and ask ourselves, are the pundits acting insidious and selfishly? Meaning, do they know that they're wrong, but continue to spew bullshit in order to increase the viewership numbers for their shitty shows? I'm talking about Fox, MSNBC, CNN, any news that is now for-profit news, that is on television, that needs viewership. Do they know that they're full of shit and therefore are simply shelling out shitty information to make it seem that it's so close, to make it seem like they know what they're talking about in order to drive up viewership? Because I got to tell you, either way that this lands, that the pundits are wrong or that they know what they're doing and they're just trying to like branch up viewership, we fucking lose on both ends. This is a double loss for the American people, because on one end, if they are wrong, we can't trust their incompetence. So why the hell are we listening to them? They're full of shit. Worse, if they are duplicitous, if they're acting only out of their own inherent selfishness and know that they're wrong, but sharing a bunch of shitty information just to make us watch their program, to drive up viewership, that's even worse, because then we can't trust them, because they're not acting in the interest of the American people. They're acting in their own self-interest. This is a really shitty place to be in, because that bone to pick with the media means that on both ends, they are absolutely full of shit. We can't trust what they're saying. We can't dissect it and be cognizant that, like news back in the day that was used to inform, now it's only used to drive up viewership and profits or to share misaligned information. And they're all fucking guilty. And don't think for a minute that I'm not clumping NPR, New York Times, the Boston Globe, the Washington Post, and all of them into this situation. But the most guilty parties are those on television. To only reiterate what Doc is saying, we are out here on our own. Mm-hmm. And as he said, if we're not getting our own information, critically thinking, dissecting what is best for ourselves, for our communities, and doing what's best for us, there ain't going to be no Superman that are coming and save us. And fucking Rupert Murdoch is certainly not going to save shit. On that end, man, I want to give everyone else the platform, but I want to thank everybody for coming out for an incredible show and an incredible conversation.
Well, I'll say this. Well, maybe we should do that media episode next week. I'm down for that. Yeah. I think the other thing is, listen, man, just to address what Omar said, and we'll go deeper into it next time, is, well, yeah, because they have to run against ads, and the way you get ads is to get people watching, and you do that with drama, and you do that being scintillating, and you also do that telling people exactly what they want to hear. We like to hear things that agree with us. If you want to go, you can go find 1,000,002 places that can go tell you that Kamala was robbed, that the election was rigged, that it was only racism, it was only this, black men were you can go hear whatever message you want to hear in any niche way. There's at least 10 different places you can go online and find somebody talking directly to you. I would push, and I would really push us as a people, as a group, to be informed. Don't listen to just the things that make you feel good. Listen to things that are fact, that you can go and check sources, that you can cross-reference and kind of deal in that, because they know that your emotions are wagging the dog right now. So I think that that's really one. I think too, man, like, we have to be adults about this thing, man. We really, really do. Like, there's a lot of us that's kind of, dealing with whatever and having the emotions. And hey, look, whatever. I'm a toxic man. It is what it is. That's good. That according to my party. But at some point, the same way you get mad at the right when they ignore global warming data, the same way we get mad at them when they ignore global data around global markets. I'm watching my side ignore all this education data, ignore all this election data that we had, where how this thing fell out, and that's a problem for us, and we have to do better. And again, I'm not going to say the things that you might want to hear, but I'm going to be honest with you. And I'm saying this as a card-carrying Democrat. I'm saying this as somebody who was in leadership in that party, somebody who's given money to that party as recently as a few weeks ago. I am disappointed in my team, and I saw this happening for the last 3 years. So I hear it, but I thought this was a good episode, and hopefully you know a little bit more about the Department of Education, what they do, how things might shift, but also have been equipped with things that you can do, because if we are truly on our own and nobody's coming to save us, then we need to stockpile on information and on materials. And that's up to us, because ain't nobody gonna love you more than you love you. Stop looking for love in these polls. Stop thinking that these other groups owe you something. And if you keep expecting that, you're gonna continue to be disappointed. For Jubilee, that's Omar, that's David, I am Charles, and we will see you all next week. Same bad time, same bad station. Peace. And brothers, y'all ain't gotta wait for the commercial to end before leaving. Peace out, y'all.
Today's episode of BS3 Network is brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's is going to McDonald's and creating a universe for longtime fans of both McDonald's and anime. I love sauce on my McNuggets and can't wait to try the savory chili McDonald's sauce. It's savory, chili, and bold. For decades, across various episodes and genres, McDonald's has shown up in the anime world and most commonly called McDonald's. McDonald's will be bringing the McDonald's world to life with episodic shorts and manga comics. For a limited time, anime fans will have the opportunity to experience their favorite fictional restaurant. You have until March 25th to try the new savory chili McDonald's sauce with your 10-piece chicken nuggets.